Hi guys, thank you for tuning in. I'm Sandeep Irandi, your host, and this is a podcast on sustainability crisis. In this podcast, we feature monologues and conversations related to ongoing global environmental crisis, which is actually created due to prolonged exploitation by our current human civilization. And in this podcast, we'll also be exploring and analyzing the possibilities and solutions needed to take action for transitioning our global societies to be truly sustainable. And for this global transformation to happen, we mainly require social awareness and economic stability, which is more important, which has to be supported by political insight. And for the better part of last century, many scientists and technology entrepreneurs have been giving us answers how to do it. And we also have the undeniable facts and data to show us and give us enough reason that why we should do it. And the biggest question of all, when we should do it? And actually the answer is right now. With that short introduction, today I'll be talking about why our habits are more important than our choices at an individual level and why it has significant impact as a whole. As more of us are getting conscious about this issue, there seems to be one lingering question in everyone's mind that what can I do? What more can I do to be more sustainable? So, the first and obvious thought we get initially is let's make more sustainable choices. So, whenever we hear there is a solution, then we do not want to change a thing, right? And I'm afraid that we will carry on with business as usual because our goals are comfort and convenience. So there may be an unspoken entitlement mindset, right? And also a behavior that we probably should overcome. So right now, how do we make sustainable choices? First, we look around for sustainable alternatives and solutions like buying an electric car instead of a diesel car and use bioplastics instead of the regular ones, the evil ones that is destroying landfills, oceans, and it is everywhere, literally everywhere, right? What else? We can use recycled paper instead of cutting down trees for new paper. The list goes on for almost everything that we use. So, as I said earlier, we do not want to change anything because we know that there is a solution for this problem that we have. So, it means that we keep our habits but made different choices. So, in order to understand this a little better, there is a saying that the World War II has ended with. And of course, it ended with dropping atomic bombs on Japan, causing enormous devastation. So actually, the saying goes like this: old habits with new weapons created the devastation. As long as the old habit, which is the war that we have been fighting for, as long as the humanity existed. And with the old weapons like the bow and arrow or the fireball projectiles and whatnot, and these kind of weapons are at one level. But when we have new weapons like supersonic jets, atomic bombs, but we still have the old habit, which is a war, which is we are at war with new weapons, and that kind of habit created the massive scale destruction. And this is what happened in Japan, and this is why the World War II has ended, because we realized that we cannot go on like this, and we experienced the consequences and the devastations that the atomic bombs are capable of. And maybe this example seems too much, but in comparison to the ecological devastations, that we have been causing, I would say maybe not at all, because humans are only intelligent enough to exploit and conquer, but not intelligent enough to understand the consequences of exploitation without actually causing it and then experiencing them and then regret it. So more than just making better choices, it seems like changing our habits is an essential key going forward in making our lives and also the lives of future generations that follow to be truly sustainable. So where does these habits come from? And I believe a good part of them actually come from our culture, which is in turn influenced heavily by geography, I should say. For example, lavish weddings, driving alone in a huge SUV. And it doesn't matter if it is an electric SUV, and it also doesn't really matter if the wedding is carbon neutral, as long as it is lavish. No, don't get me wrong. What do I mean in the entirety is, if it is a taxi driver with a big SUV, then it's totally necessary for the livelihood of that person. So sustainability crisis is a war that we do not want to fight with old habits and new solutions. So we need to change our habits first dramatically before we look into sustainable choices and alternative solutions. In the end, all of this, it may feel and sound like minimalism, but where I'm actually coming from is we must ask ourselves that whatever we are consuming, is it absolutely necessary? After all, it might raise some concerns about creativity and opportunities that may be lost. And I would like to hear from you any comments and criticism, and you can reach me out via direct message or an email. And that brings us to the end of the podcast, and this is my first podcast I ever made, and I'm planning to do a series on this on every weekend, hopefully on every Saturday. So feel free to check back next week and share it with your friends if you like it. If you have been listening, thank you for tuning in.